And again, I'm not sure you can limit it, if that's what the board decides, to specific agenda items. I don't know that there's a statute related to that at all. This board has already said you're limited to 3 minutes each, and that period of time is 15 minutes unless extended by a vote of the board. So you have some parameters on it already. But this language means anything is.
It opens it up. I understand what Corey's saying, but the reality is that with the way it's stated now, we have stifled, quite honestly, free speech.
What we might want to do, and I'm just throwing this out there because Corey's got a point. Legally, I'm not sure I'm giving you the advice. In other words, I'm not saying legally, can you continue to keep it the way that it is? And if the answer is yes, perhaps you need to know that before you vote to change something. In other words, could this be tabled and dealt with at the next board meeting? We have some legal advice that says, has some advice that basically says if you want to continue to say only agenda items, you're perfectly okay doing that, as opposed to making that change at the board meeting tonight without knowing for sure what you can or cannot do.
Okay, I'll make a motion to table it.
So we have a motion to table it. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
And a second by Mark. Further discussion?
I would say you could amend that motion, have a time frame to bring it back, otherwise it just sits being tabled.
Okay, I'll amend that motion. Mark, amend your motion. I have to amend my motion.
If you don't get a second, it doesn't become amended, that's cool.
And then I will make the motion to table this until November's board meeting. Mark?
And then Brent, it would be this specific language would be the question. Or if John's going to do it.
Okay, since we did it the first time, we're gonna vote on your amendment to your original motion. So right now, folks, we are just gonna vote, because we did it the first time, on the amendment to your original motion, which is to just basically table it, bring it back to the November. All those in favor? Do you understand what I'm asking?
No, I don't.
Okay, she made her original motion to table it. She amended her motion
Okay.
to bring it back in November board meeting.
Okay.
So we're voting on the amendment just to,
Give more clarity. to
Okay,
what
gotcha.
we need to do.
Just the addition of the November.
correct, so
Okay,
we're gonna
that's
vote
a
on the
yes for me.
amendment.
That's a yes for me.
You just table
Okay.
something that sits in limbo.
Yeah, I
Okay.
get it. I
Yes.
appreciate that.
So all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, the motion, okay, so the amendment will pass. So now we're gonna vote on the actual motion
Yes, now I actually make the motion.
to bring this back in November. Any discussion?
Think about what you're gonna do here.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, legal counsel. I believe, John, you and I had talked about this, and I think,
How long are we doing this?
another minute
I'm looking at
or two. I believe what we were talking about is just the communication again with the contact of the legal counsel.
Well, again, I think what you were hoping is that within the normal job description of any superintendent, there are going to be times when you have to contact, in this case, Dean. And often when that happens, you basically talk to the board president. Very seldom you do something without making the board president aware that Dean and I, but it may reach a point where it needs to come before the full board. I don't know that the language here needs to be changed.
Okay.
And I think it says, much can be considered routine when the administrator concludes that unusual types or amounts of professional service may be required. The board directs the administrator to so advise it and seek either initial or continuing authorization for such service. That's the case where we go into a closed session, and I indicate that we've got something going on. I want to make the board aware that there's going to be probably some money involved. Perhaps we can use our own insurance, attorney, whatever else. It's just, I don't know what's happened in the past, but that's just common practice that anytime it looks like your legal bills are gonna get out of hand, you wanna bring that full board together as a part of the closed session, say, folks, we've got some issues here. I think our insurance attorney can handle it, I think that the insurance is not gonna touch it. We're gonna have to go with our regular attorney, bond attorney, whatever it is.
Strategies for addressing legal concerns,
Absolutely.
more than just one recourse, is what you're saying.
So I don't really know that you need to change this, I think it's very clear. The issue would be whether or not, if this isn't happening, when you're getting involved with your superintendent evaluation, you need to let them know that you're not happy, that you're hearing that we're racking up a couple $1,000s in legal bills, and you see the vouchers, you see the things coming through, why weren't you informed as a board that this was happening?
Okay. Anybody else?
All right, we don't need any motion, hold on.
We can move on. Assessment of district goals. Jessica, this is yours.
When I looked at this, we have not updated this in quite some time, our district goals. So I was just hoping that at some point in the future that we can revisit this, because I thought there was a date on it, but it was pretty darn old.
So why don't we, it's for a future agenda item? Okay, all right. Anybody else? Okay, we're gonna keep moving on then. Let's see what's next. Keep getting locked up. Development of administrative guidelines. I think this one kind of tied in with all.
And what is the status of administrative guidelines in this district, Steve?
Most of them had been reviewed by administration. There's probably, when Ann left, there were about 30 or so that hadn't been completed yet. So our plan was to finish those, but then again, she left. So I think when you and I spoke a little bit, should those wait until you actually have a new superintendent hired and then have that person be the one to take on those guidelines?
And the bottom line is that it's Neola policy, but the guidelines are how that superintendent and his staff interpret that. The two districts that I was a part of prior to this had no administrative guidelines, and the board decided in both cases they didn't want the interim to be the person developing those. They wanted their new superintendent, since that was the person who was going to have to live with those guidelines. So I think it's really up to you, but my thought would be if you really want them to have meaning, give your new administrator, he or she, the ability to put those guidelines together.
But we should change that last word, correct?
Where is that?
The superintendent shall maintain a current organizational chart to which immediate reference can be made by the board or any employee of the board. Should that be district? A non-employee of the board. They're not an employee of the board. Aren't they the employee of the
They're
district?
employees of the board.
Are they?
The board hires them, you're hiring them.
Okay.
Any reference in statute, the statute in fact for teachers references approval by the board.
Okay.
11824 and 22 for administrative
Got it.
requires the board.
Okay. And evaluation of the superintendent.
Is it your intent to finish this tonight?
I was trying, as long as we had Steve here, it'd be nice to get his input.
Oh, yeah, this was mine.
Yes.
It was just contradictory, the first
Yeah.
paragraph and the second paragraph, and we need to fix that.
I think, you said 6 months or some other.
Something,
Yep.
I mean, I don't like the word
Periodic.
periodically. What is periodic? Is that monthly, is that quarterly, is that 6 months?
I think that's a board decision. how you want
As
it.
it's written, it gives a sitting board the opportunity to do it more frequently. And it's at minimally, and that's why it's
Well, I get
it's
this, I
left
get-
vague, so that if you want to do it quarterly to somebody, you can do it quarterly. But if you say every 6 months, then that's all you can do. It just, I mean, I understand what you're thinking about, what you're worried about, but there's flexibility written into it. Minimally, you're gonna do it annually. You can do it more often because that's what periodically says.
again, in other districts, Corey's right, that often periodically means the evaluation might be the superintendent's coming before the board on a quarterly basis, perhaps in a closed session. And that way, you have the ability to say to the superintendent, here are the things we're pleased with, here are the things we think you still need to work on. But then you have one annual evaluation. What happens at that annual evaluation is not a surprise, because periodically you've met with the superintendent and say, things are going fine, or no, you need to step it up in these areas. So again, there's always an annual evaluation, but I've been a part of situations where on a quarterly basis, before the board.
Throughout the year.
And
That's,
a
yeah.
couple words in there, if that helps you. Amy.
Yeah, yeah.
The advantage is there's no surprise when it comes to the annual evaluation.
I'll clean it up, but the board believes about periodically throughout the year, and the board shall, at a minimum, annually evaluate the performance of the system. Is that still inconsistent?
Well, no, that's like Corey said, the intent
What you
was
have here, it's a matter of
to.
how you understand how it's written and why it's written, that's all. But you have here works. There's a reason periodically isn't there, because it's not a limiting factor.
Well, I kinda like how we
Yeah, we clarified a little bit.
yeah,
That's why.
So,
defined a little bit more, okay.
can we move forward with this?
Yep, I'm cool.
Okay, so,
Do I
we need a
make
motion?
to, approve the changes as we just modified?
Okay.
I was gonna think,
Okay, we have a motion by Amy and a second by Jess. Further discussion? If not, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Job description. Again, just because of time. Just one or two more. Okay. Whoa, that's a big garbage on the bottom. I mean, since we're,
Who brought this change forward?
I honestly do not remember.
Wasn't me.
What is it, Diane? The, job description for the superintendent. I would, if you guys, I mean, if anybody wants to go into it further, there's a lot, I think, but with what we're gonna have coming up in the next few months with John,
Yeah.
we can.
Make a motion to table this and review prior to
Yep,
the process of selecting a superintendent.
Okay, so we have a motion by Kevin, is there a second? Second by Amy, further discussion?
I just want to throw this off for the board to think of, that word public relations. Many school districts are moving away from public relations to school community relations. Public relations is a one-way process. It's often looked upon as manipulation, we're trying to get people to do a certain thing. School community relations, back and forth, two-way
Collaborative.
communication, just something to think about in the process of revising that.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second, any other discussion? All those in favor?
Right.
Opposed? Motion carries. The two under the the personal communication devices, we've discussed it at length about 2 meetings ago. Do you want to bring that back or wait to see what we're coming forward with?
I still think it's been tabled, and to Corey's point, there's no timeline right now on it, but my suggestion, we bring that back, quite honestly, after we have the survey completed
Right.
next year, or this year, I should say.
Okay.
2019, and then reconsider where we're at. Is it manageable with what is being administered by administration in the handbook, or is it still an opportunity for us?
Okay. So you're going to wait until we see that survey, correct?
Yep.
Okay. Any other discussion? 5610, suspension and expulsion. Now this one, if I recall, was written by Dean.
This is a Neola policy.
Oh, this is Neil. Okay.
Yeah. The pre-expulsion abeyance was between Dean, myself, and Ann.
Okay, got it.
Jess was there, I wasn't sure what the specific question.
Yeah, and honestly, I wrote it down, but I didn't write it specifically. I had looked at this one, so I apologize for that. So, I think what I was thinking about in this is the fact that I don't think in here, I think it was specified on school grounds, and I think it needs to also include at school events and functions as well, something to that effect.
Representing the school district,
Yes.
representation of any school district.
The thing, this is a new narrative to us, right?
No,
No?
no.
No.
Let's go to,
Other comment on this. Just understand what your concern is. I believe I understand your concern is because we have exposure at school events as well.
there's language in policy that says these rules apply to activities on school grounds and school activities that may take place in other places. I would have to dig that, or
Well, they also have a code of conduct in their handbooks too, is there not something
Maybe in the
that carries
field trip
over into it?
policies too.
what's what?
It's in the field trip
Field
policies.
trip
Yeah,
policy
field
too?
trip policy.
So like if it, a field trip.
Do you wanna review that?
Well-
Yeah.
So we put that-
Yeah, this is all specific, Mosinee language.
Because I know we have it, because we.
Yeah.
So maybe it's just under a different policy.
Yes.
that
What
is-
I was about to say is that the language is crafted because we have to be careful from a legal standpoint, how far our reach is. So although we may control a sporting event, but it's not on ground that we own, we have some limitations there. That's why it's crafted differently into other sections of the law.
Yeah. Great.
So,
When we write it out, we usually say all school events.
Events.
So whether if we have a game in West Pier, you're not going to West Pier, because it's a school event.
But that's for a sporting event. What if it's some other type of
Like-
event?
Any school, yeah, it's really school function.
Or whatever, it's a school function, it's an organization sponsored by the school.
Yes, sir.
I think if you look at, for example, the suspension, probably the third paragraph down where it talks about, while not at school, or while not under the supervision of the school authority, that endangers the property or safety. So there's a lot of, while not at the following things, the suspension or the expulsion policy does apply. If that's your worry, I think as Steve is suggesting, there's language in here that really covers the ability of an administrator to bring a suspension forth or to bring an expulsion forth.
Those are straight from state statutes.
Yes.
Pardon me?
Those are straight out of state.
Yeah, they're right on the
statute.
statute. The only thing I would,
Yeah.
but if it's a student who's at the event in West Pier and they're not your co-curricular student, or they're not, your reach doesn't go that far. Now, if they violate some law in the West Pier, certainly the police can be involved, but I'm not sure you have the ability, unless you create some nexus from that event back to school, that you have the ability to discipline them for something that happened in another town. Out there, your co-curricular kid. But there's
So we
language.
basically have to follow the policy.
Yes, yes, I'm good.
Okay.
I'm good with all those
Yeah.
comments and explanation. Yep.
Okay. So we're gonna leave as is. Okay, we'll move on to purchasing 6320, and I believe this came back a few times, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, it's just the amount.
Yes, we want the money.
Okay, so is that all you would like to see changed, or others see changed? Because it was at one time, Brent, correct, from 1,000?
$1,000.
I think it has 1,000, yes.
Okay, now it's at 10,000. What, if any change, would we like to see?
Well, who brought it forward?
Brent, I would like to know your feedback on this topic.
Well, to be quite frank, I mean, the policy that you have works. I don't think I've broken your trust and gone out and bought a jacuzzi or done something foolish that you'd say, well, golly gee, why did he do this? I mean, and quite frankly, at times when we're buying stuff, before the $1,000 was difficult, because oftentimes now $1,000 isn't what it once was. You know, we're buying stuff periodically that Brady particularly, in the tech area, I mean, we buy stuff that's, you
This
know,
blames it back on
$1,000
me,
and it isn't,
Brady's fault.
you know, it isn't hard and really, like I say, I don't think it's created any issues for you guys as far as, you know,
we would really,
disappointment.
we would struggle. There's been 3 or 4 times in the last 2 years where like I could not wait for a board meeting and we needed a $3, $4, or $5,000 piece. It would have been really, really difficult to maintain operations without.
And that's why it did come back and you did raise it, because you didn't have the time, the sensitivity on a lot of those to wait for $1,000 to bring it before the court every time you wanted to spend $1,000.
Okay, so,
I think that and I'm gonna speak very frankly here. I do think that the reason that this is on the table here today is
Yeah.
because there is some trust issue.
You know, that's-
And it's not specific to you, but it's specific to how things have been decided, and right underneath that $10,000 mark where they could have been and should have been, in my interpretation, brought forth another means for decision-making authority as the board to be involved in that. That's why I think some of my opinion is that's why it was on the board here today.
and maybe that's something that can all tie in with job description of the next superintendent as well. More communication.
And moving forward, because I know just you asked Brent, and I do know why we upped that up. And I do.
I understand that.
Yeah, because it
Can't
was.
hog tie it, I'm
Yes,
making
you're right.
decisions for
So
things that are
I'm sorry.
essential. But
Okay.
when
Yeah, I
things
know.
are stacked
Yeah.
to just be underneath 10,000, to stay underneath the radar,
It was.
that's
yes.
an issue.
Right, right.
Okay, so we're good, we're
I'm
gonna
okay with
move
it,
it.
as is.
Okay, 9120 Public Information Program, I think Amy, is that you?
Yeah, there was, but that wasn't in my thing, but it turned out.
Okay.
I think what it was down here.
Yeah, just that, and this gets back to the public saying that we didn't post something, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
So it's like, and then we're like, well, we're not required to post at any particular place. Well, should we be defining where we should be posting things? Specifically the paper, I mean, that is what we were talking about before.
Right.
Do you designate something at your organizational meeting, do you designate an official paper?
No,
No.
we don't.
Uh-uh.
There are some requirements, and I don't know your paper, but if it meets a certain size or a certain level of
I think
reaching
that's
out,
the issue.
The issue
Mosinee
was-
Times only gets published
Once a
certain
week.
times.
Yeah.
it may not
And
meet
if
the
you want it
criteria.
published like the day after the board meeting,
Right.
you gotta go with the Mosinee Herald.
The thing is, there is a lot of specificity already in policy on notices. Board shall cause to be posted at the board office and in other locations. Consider as follows: all school building, Mosinee City Hall, Marathon Savings, Valley Community, and BMO Harris. The Mosinee Times and Wausau Daily Herald mail copies of the school board agenda. Courtesy copies are mailed. This again was very specific Mosinee language we brought over. So there is already very specific language and policy about where those go.
And you're not required to have a designated source. Tom Griggs told us that.
I might disagree with that a little bit. You are if that paper meets certain criteria. This may not based on the amount of publishing, but if a paper meets a certain level of criteria, I believe they have to be designated as your official newspaper. I'll do some checking, Brian.
Yeah, I
You're
know.
even sending it to the municipality chairman and the city mayor.
Right, yeah, I think we, so we'll bring that in.
Yeah, should we, yeah, table it for the November meeting?
Okay.
Make
Yeah,
a
so
motion, table to the November meeting?
Yeah, that's,
So we can research
Sure.
what the criteria is.
Okay, so we have a motion by Amy, is there a second? And a second by Kelly to table this until the November meeting. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Citizen Advisory Committee. I believe this is just a order. I did not bring this one forward, I don't know who did. Is this more or less like our
I'm assuming it's whoever, I don't remember where this came from, but it's this line here. The superintendent shall transmit the contents from a committee to the board. I am assuming this comment is that it shouldn't just be the superintendent, it should be somebody else from a member of the committee also transmitting that. But I don't know, I'm interpreting what I think it is.
Who asked for it?
I don't recall. There was a lot of questions that came, a lot of, that came through.
Okay, so what do I do?
I like the idea of it, but. John, have you seen any of these in previous districts where you were at?
Again, the ability for the board to create special committees, most boards have some language that allows you to do that, whether it's a strategic plan committee, whatever it is. I'm looking, when the committee is ready to submit a report, the superintendent shall arrange for a meeting for the purpose of receiving the report. Again, if this is the type of thing that isn't happening, then there's periodic reviews when you're meeting with your administrator to let that person know this is not acceptable. I mean, perhaps you could even, when you charter that committee, if you create one, there could be an expectation in the charter of creating the committee that the board is informed, or whatever it is, comes back to the board. I don't see where you really need to change the language. And this is, I understand this is common sense, and I know common sense isn't always common practice, but it just seems like this is something that most people would understand. You're creating a committee, the board wants to know what the
What's
results of
going
that
on with
committee
it?
are.
Okay, I'm gonna write that down, maybe I'll go through my previous notes and see what the specific question might have been. So, unless anybody else has further discussion that one, I'll take a look through my notes. Last one is class size.
I'd like to make a motion, but I'd like to use information first. When do you guys start looking at next year's numbers?
End of January, beginning of February.
Okay.
And the middle school numbers will come out in.
Would there be some way of collaborating in developing this policy that we'd work together
For sure.
and bring it to the board together? Would that be a better approach?
Yeah.
Because the reality is it's a lot of pieces.
Yeah.
For sure.
So
Okay.
I'll make a motion that we table this and bring it back to the board in February 2019.
Okay, we have a motion by Kevin, is there a second?
I just put two samples in
And
there.
a
I'm
second
sure
by
you can-
Kelly, further discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Points
Opposed?
is real specific, whatever.
Motion
is
carries.
more-
We're done.
Thank you.
We have a motion by Corey, is there a second?
Second.
And a second by Kevin. Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
5 minutes.